Speaker, for 3 years, the Foreign Affairs Committee that I chair has worked with great determination to build support for this North Korea sanctions legislation. I want to thank my Democratic colleagues, and I especially want to thank our ranking member, Mr. Eliot Engel of New York, for his support in this legislation. I also thank Senators Corker and Gardner for their leadership in the Senate and for their strong additions, particularly on human rights and on cyber attacks by the brutal and hostile North Korean regime. Today, Congress, Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate, unite to put this North Korea sanctions legislation on the President's desk. Last month, this bill passed the House with 418 votes, and this week it passed the Senate 96-0. Mr. Speaker, these overwhelming votes reflect bipartisan frustration with our North Korea policy, a policy of strategic patience that isn't working. Today, Congress unites to say it's time for a new approach. Mr. Speaker, last month, North Korea conducted its 4th known nuclear test, and last weekend it concluded a long-range missile test. And on Tuesday, our Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, testified that North Korea has restarted a plutonium reactor and expanded that production of weapons-grade nuclear fuel. The threat to the United States and our allies is real. The tyrannical regime of Kim Jong-un has developed increasingly destructive weapons. Its miniaturized nuclear warheads that fit onto its most reliable missiles. We cannot stand by any longer. The legislation we consider today, this H.R. 757, is the most comprehensive North Korea sanctions legislation to come before this body. My bill uses targeted financial and economic pressure to isolate Kim Jong-un and his top officials from the assets they maintain in foreign banks and from the hard currency that sustains their rule. These assets are gained in part from illicit activities on the part of North Korea, like counterfeiting U.S. currency and selling weapons around the world. And they are used to advance the North Korean nuclear program. They also pay for the luxurious lifestyle of the ruling elites and the continued repression of the North Korean people by their police state. In 2005, the Treasury Department blacklisted a small bank in Macau called Banco Delta Asia, which not only froze North Korea's money in the bank, but also scared away other financial institutions from dealing with the government in North Korea for fear that they too would be blacklisted. Unfortunately, this effective policy was shelved for ill-fated negotiations. But this bill can get us back to a winning strategy. Equally important to the strong sanctions in this bill are its critical human rights provisions. North Korea operates a brutal system of gulags that hold as many as 120,000 men, women, and children. And if a North Korean is suspected of any kind of dissenting opinion, even telling a joke about the regime, his entire family, for 3 generations, is punished. North Korea is a human rights house of horrors. 2 years ago, the UN Commission of Inquiry released the most comprehensive report on North Korea to date, and their finding was that the Kim Jong-un regime and the whole family regime has, for decades, pursued policies involving crimes, and this is the words of the United Nations report, crimes that shock the conscience of humanity. And this amended version requires the administration to develop a strategy to promote to promote North Korean human rights, including a list of countries that use North Korean slave labor. The implementation of this bill will help sever a key subsidy for North Korea's weapons of mass destruction program, for only when the North Korean leadership realizes that its criminal activities are untenable will the prospects for peace and security in Northeast Asia improve. I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.